Imagine you are sitting on a bench in a public park. Maybe it's just your break from work, or maybe you are just reading a book, when all of a sudden somebody comes over and he says, "Hi, I'm an undergraduate student, and in the framework of a research program aimed at studying students' concentration during the day, we have to carry out some experiments. All you have to do is watch a short video and answer a short questionnaire. It only takes 15 minutes and you will be paid 6 euros. Are you interested?" Well, 6 euros for 15 minutes of watching a video and answering some questions, that's a quite well paid job. So probably you say, "Yeah, okay, let's do it. Yeah, okay, why not?" But when you follow the experimenter to the lab, all of a sudden he seems to get a message on his mobile phone. And unfortunately, the message is not good at all, because the experimenter turns around and has to tell you, "Oh, I'm so sorry. My colleague just called me and we already have the number of persons needed for the video. We only needed a few more people, so it's no longer possible. However, I just remembered, I don't know if you would be interested, that we are conducting another experiment which also deals with students' concentration. All you have to do is to copy a number of symbols as fast as you can. This experiment lasts 15 minutes, but you won't get paid for it. Are you interested?" So what do we have here? First of all, there was the lure, which was the offer of a well-paid and interesting sounding, low-effort experiment. And there you said yes. And now you're offered to participate in a less interesting, rather boring experiment in which you have to copy some symbols and you won't even get paid for it. How do you react? Are you a little bit angry? Are you a little bit pissed because, "No, that's definitely not the deal we had. Sorry, I won't follow you on this"? Well, the truth is, in all the experiments with over 1,000 participants they conducted on the lure technique, the complete opposite turned out. In comparison to a control condition in which participants were asked directly whether they were willing to take part in the boring experiment, the compliance rate when using the lure technique on average doubled. And in a number of experiments, which I want to present to you now, scientists try to figure out why the technique is so successful. And first of all, one could speculate that as soon as we follow the other person to the laboratory, as soon as we are halfway, we already invested quite a lot. So we talked to the other person and we already walked with the experimenter for at least some meters. So maybe it's our investment in this project that we don't want to waste. And if that's the case, the lure technique should be even more successful when we invested even more, when we are, for example, already sitting in the laboratory. And this is exactly what they tested in another study with 150 students. When they made the students come to the laboratory, they had them sit down, and only in the last moment the participants were told, "Oh, sorry, we can't conduct this video experiment, but maybe you are interested in another experiment." And even though one could suspect that this should have made the participants even more angry, this tactic was even more successful. About 92% of the participants said, "Yeah, okay, let's do the other experiment." So the more the other person invests, the more effective the lure technique seems to be. But as they also found a quite strong effect when the revelation, if you want to call it like this, took place very early, the investment hypothesis seems to be only half the story. Another explanation for the efficacy of the lure technique might be impression management. We all have the tendency that we want to be perceived in a special way. And usually we want to be perceived as good, stable, strong, helpful, and all the other good attributes. So if we agree on taking part in the first well-paid video experiment, but we then say when we hear, well, sorry, we can't conduct this experiment, but there's still this second experiment. And when we then say, well, no, sorry, I won't participate in this one. Come on, I don't get paid for it and it's boring. Well, this is not such a good impression management, because then we would look as not stable, as not helpful. And therefore, to make a good impression, it might be better to say, well, okay, I will participate in this rather boring study. But how can we test whether this impression management explanation is really right? Well, what if we exchange the experimenter, to which we said, well, of course, I will participate in the video experiment, by a second experimenter, to which we never presented ourselves as helpful or interested in science. So, towards this person, we shouldn't feel obliged to present us in this special way. So if there are two experimenters, well, then the effect should be much smaller. Marie Marchand and colleagues tested this in an experiment published in 2015 by using quite the same procedure as in the previous studies. Participants were told, well, are you interested to participate in a 15-minute lasting video experiment? You will be paid €6. And then most participants said, yeah, why not? They came to the lab, and when they sat down there, they were told by the experimenter, oh, I'm so sorry, we can't conduct the experiment. I'm really sorry. Then she left for a minute, and a second experimenter entered the room and told the participant, hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm a student in neurology and I have to do an experiment on students' concentration. All you have to do is to correctly copy the maximum amount of symbols. So it was again exactly the same boring experiment. But this time proposed by a different experimenter. And it turned out, maybe a little bit surprising, the compliance rate to participate in this boring experiment was still quite high in this condition with the two different experimenters. The exact compliance rate was about 64%, whereas when they used only one experimenter, the compliance rate was 76%, which is only a little bit higher and in fact not significantly higher, so there was no significant effect. But both conditions again were much more successful than a control condition in which the participants were directly asked whether they would participate in the boring experiment. So these results do not speak for the impression management explanation, because otherwise the effect for the condition with the two different experimenters should have been much lower.